Welcome to the Aerospace Executive Podcast, featuring in-depth conversations with executives, leaders, influencers, and journalists in this dynamic, high-stakes industry. Hosted by Craig Picken, founder of North Star Group, the boutique executive search firm for the aerospace industry. You'll learn how top aerospace executives are developing their people, competing for talent, overcoming challenges, and adjusting to industry trends to drive growth and profits. And now, let's join your host, Craig Picken.
Hey, welcome to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. Today I'm here with Scott Ashton. Scott is the president of Corporate Service Supply and Manufacturing up in Connecticut and Long Island, New York. He is the former president of Associated Aviation Group, which was a division of Sikorsky Helicopter, and the chief commercial officer of Gamma Aviation. So Scott has got a great background in both Part 135, business jet and helicopter operations, and now the Part 145 component repair and overhaul world. Scott, what's going on up in Connecticut today?
Craig, thanks a lot for having me. It's a real thrill to be on with you today. And it's beautiful weather, and it's a nice crisp August or October afternoon, and still celebrating the Red Sox win.
Oh my gosh. They just,
I know, I just lost half your audience.
Yeah, probably, but that's okay. It's we'll put the 3-hour time delay on there so they don't hear that part. How's that?
Okay. Okay, good.
So all good. So hey, look, I mean, you're coming at aviation from a lot of different viewpoints. Gamma Aviation, obviously one of the most well-known, business jet operators in the country. And then I was up at LaGuardia Airport the other day, and I saw one of Associated Air Group's aircraft. S-76 is overhead, and I thought, well, I started thinking about you, and now you got the 145. What's happening in what are you seeing in the industry today?
Well, Craig, I think there's a lot of creative destruction going on, and I say creative because there's a lot of interesting business models that really have been, they've been kind of mutating over the last 10 years as people have tried to figure out different ways to utilize business aviation. And, one of the things, that I was able to do pretty early in my career was I had a great experience with a little startup called Pogo Jet with the very light jets. You remember that?
Absolutely.
With the Eclipses. And that was a great experience. And, we were trying really hard to break into the air taxi space. And, we were probably a little bit early. But, when you look at what Wheels Up is doing and VistaJet and some of those, those other models, it's just a variation on the Pogo Jet theme. So, it's really great to see those guys, out there, trying to do innovative things with utilizing business jets. But it's, operating airplanes for money is still a really challenging way to make a living. And I don't think that will ever change, whether it's an airline or a business jet or a VLJ or a piston aircraft. It's always going to be a challenge.
See, you and I were at the Corporate Jet Investor Conference last year, and everybody's, the great, I think the great buzzwords right now are the democratization of business aviation. And I see a lot of people out there saying we're going to make business aviation as inexpensive and as easy as buying a business class seat on an airliner. Yeah, I'm a little skeptical, but you've been deeper into that part of the operation than I have too. So what are your thoughts?
Well, one of the takeaways from that conference, and you were a big part of it. You gave a great presentation on the pilot hiring situation. So you see pilot salaries going up higher than they've ever been in corporate aviation. Fuel costs are steady but trending upward. Aircraft depreciation is trending upward. The depreciation expense on the aircraft. Maintenance costs, with ADS-B mandates and whatnot. The charter operations, the pricing, the yields that owners are getting aren't going up, to match costs. So that means that their spreads are being compressed. Mm-hmm. And, that's creating, I think, a real challenge for owners and operators, in the charter market.
Right.
What I'd love to see some of these charter brokers and these platforms doing is figuring out how they can improve yields for operators. Instead of just lowering the price point. But I don't know I don't know how you do that.
Well, that's what my whole thing is, and look, I think Kenny Dichter he's a great sales guy, and I love what Wheels Up is doing, but it's still very expensive. Operating an airplane is still very expensive. Buying an airplane, I think the King Air 350s are $6-7 million, $6-7 million now, and then you've got your operating expenses on top of them, and it's like, if I've got a big pizza, that pizza is going to be 10,000 calories no matter how many ways I slice it. And that's the analogy. I go, should we just go back to, should we just go back to the world of saying, hey, look, it's business aviation. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but here's the benefits of it. And
well, you look at the traditional charter management market where you've got an owner. And I use the analogy of a vacation home. You've got an owner who's going to own that aircraft anyway. They're bearing all of the fixed expenses. And if they're able to get a contribution margin to offset their fixed expenses, they're happy. Mm-hmm. So, in a way, the charter customer is subsidizing the ownership costs of the aircraft.
Right.
And the owner of that aircraft is subsidizing the charter pricing. So, they're subsidizing each other, and the management company takes a spread in the middle, so everybody's kind of happy. But if that charter customer really had to bear the fully burdened cost of that aircraft, including the crewing costs, the training, not to mention the DOCs, but that fixed cost of owning a Gulfstream at $1 million to $2 million a year, the charter would be unaffordable.
Yeah, it becomes difficult. The numbers just wouldn't add up, and you're right.
Yeah, and you look at the airline industry, right? So they're probably better at fixed cost productivity than anybody, and they still struggle to make money. So private aviation with the democratization and lowering the price point and all that, that's a real challenge. I'm on the advisory board of a little startup called Evolux, and we're toying with these ideas of ad hoc self-aggregation, where small groups of people within a network can get together and create their own ad hoc trips. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a little bit of success with that. And there's a lot of education that goes on behind that. And Ray, who's the founder, he spoke at Corporate Jet Investor too. And I think, that's a concept to me that, that really in the long term has legs, because, you're using business aviation for its highest purpose, which is to go from, an obscure location to an obscure location at a time, that, where you're not served by the airlines, and you're able to put a group of people who aren't flying for a common purpose. That to me is really, that's really using business aviation at its best.
Yeah. Well, I was really critical when when GE shut down their flight department. I was incredibly critical of GE. I said, you don't, look, I understand I understand the arguments against it. It's expensive. It can be expensive. It can be a lot of things, and you get the activist investors in, and they're looking at that, going, "Well, it's an easy expense to whack." But on the flip side, I look at it and I say, "Wait a minute. If I am a struggling company, or I'm just knocking it out of the park as a company, I want my executives on the road doing the things they need to do to be successful, and I don't want them to be beholden at the whim of American Airlines and the cancellations, or or Southwest or whatever. If it costs me $1 million,
I'll be a little bit more charitable. With both GE and honestly the big three automakers. I know, we really disparage them for throwing business aviation under the bus, but to me, I think we're collateral damage in a fight for survival. And the optics are good. It's an easy shot to take out the flight department. And you can speak to an executive about all of the advantages, and business aviation is going to make my life easier. It's going to help me grow.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've got, a congressman, 25 feet from you saying, you're going to shut down your flight department, right? And you're asking for billions of dollars to, make payroll next week, that becomes a very easy decision at that point. You deal with the fallout later, which the auto executives did.
Right.
We bear the full brunt of that, and so it's particularly sensitive to us. But to me, that's an expedient thing to do, and I kind of understand why they did it, and it doesn't make sense from our perspective, being business aviation professionals. But when you're fighting for the survival of the company, we're just collateral damage, and it's very unfortunate. But that's the world we live in.
Well, completely understand that. And optics is everything. And I've been a proponent inside the industry and saying, hey, look, you open up a business and commercial aircraft magazine or a business jet flyer magazine, and you see this jet on the ramp with some people getting out of a Bentley, and they're jumping into the jet, and I'm like, guy, and then you're saying, hey, look, it's a business expense. And my answer to the industry is, hey, guys, perceptions are everything. And if that's, you can't be showing Ferraris and Bentleys on the ramp next to jets and then saying it's sort of a needed, the jets. And
NBA will tell you that the majority of passengers on private aviation are, mid-level executives or engineers or, salespeople that are going to visit customers. They're not, the most senior executives. It's being used to conduct business. And that's why, companies like, like Wheels Up and, what we were trying to do with Pogo make sense, because it's easy to throw a bunch of engineers on a King Air and send them to a customer in some obscure location and have them back, the following day.
Absolutely.
I'm a big proponent of corporate shuttles. I think corporate shuttles are fantastic.
Yep.
I wish more companies used them.
Totally agree with you. Totally. The last time I was on a corporate jet, there were 7 of us on a Citation Bravo. Every seat was filled. Every seat was filled. And you think about it, you're like, wow, Southwest Airlines probably would have been. It was a 2-hour flight, and Southwest Airlines probably would have been a little bit more comfortable. But it would have taken us 8 hours on the airlines. You pile 7 people on the jet. It's 2 hours up. It's 14 man hours on the flight versus 56, and then all of a sudden it makes sense. So.
And I can tell you, running a small business myself, there is nothing that beats face to face. You can implement all of the technology you want, video conferencing, phone calls, emails. My biggest successes have always been, stopping in to see somebody or saying, hey, I'm hopping on an airplane and I'm coming to take you out to lunch. And you're never going to replace that with a video conference or something.
No, relationships are not built via telephone and video. It's handshake, face to face, lunches, dinners. That's where trust is built. And
breakfast at NBAA.
Exactly. Or a corporate jet investor, for that matter. You sit there,
exactly.
And you meet a new face. It's all good. But So you're president of a small company now. How did you find you went from, Associated Aviation Group, a division of Sikorsky Helicopter, to a company that is a couple $1 million in size, and you're running a Part 145. And how did you find?
So I've always been attracted to the smaller elements, even within big companies. I worked at GE. I worked in the corporate aircraft finance business, which was a relatively small, tight-knit pack, or group within, the GE Capital, enterprise. And, AAG was a small company, within, a much bigger United Technologies enterprise. So I've always been attracted to the smaller, even inside a big company, I've always been attracted to, kind of the smaller, more manageable groups within the big companies. I think, just from a span of control, from, they've all been very operationally, hardcore aviation focused. And I've always been attracted to that. And now I'm running a pretty small company as president and CEO. So that's, I like running the small businesses. You've got, most times you've got quite a bit of autonomy. And the feedback loop is very fast. When you make a decision, you can tell pretty quickly whether or not it was the right decision and whether or not you've got to readjust. And I like that constant sense of feedback. The other thing that I've been very fortunate throughout most of my aviation career is I've always worked with the top people in the industry, very, very, very good professionals. And I love that. There's nothing as a leader that I like better than having a really, really, really good team.
Yep.
And I've been very fortunate throughout my career to work with, whether it was GE or at AAG or now, some of the best people in the industry. And I've learned a lot from all of them. And I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you and I talked about this at breakfast a couple of weeks ago at NBAA. I've run into people that have had $300-400 million P&L businesses, and I'll put an opportunity in front of them and say it's smaller, it's $100 million, and but there's challenges, and they'll say, well, I'm already running 300, so I'm not interested in 100 because I'm taking a step back. I'm like, well, wait a minute, you're really not. The money is better. The money for this opportunity is probably better, and trust me, there's plenty of challenges here. Do you find the small business absolutely keeps you busy?
Oh, absolutely, because you're involved in so many different things, all at the same time. So, in a small business, you don't have a staff to do your HR and your accounting and your FP&A and your advertising and marketing. Everything you do has your fingerprints on it.
Right.
And that's really empowering. And honestly, from a fulfillment perspective, when you go home at night and, you think about what that company accomplished, that day, your fingerprints are all over it. And that's really, it's empowering. It's a little scary at times because you're acting well outside your comfort zone in certain cases. And, you're having to learn very quickly, but aviation is like that. Aviation is a very entrepreneurial enterprise. It's led by entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And most of my customers are either small companies, such as us, or, very big, the OEMs or the big MROs, mm-hmm. Or, airlines or things like that. So, it's a very small company. I can go into, an airline customer and, be treated like any other vendor, good or bad, but I can get treated like any other vendor. Right. And that ecosystem is pretty cool. I think there's just a lot of elements of running an aviation business that I think are unique. But you've got the same challenges of, you have to have a drug program. You've got to have a repair station manual. You've got to have your tech pubs, so from an overhead perspective, that doesn't change. Whether you're a small company or a big company, you've got to have all of that. And, that makes running a small company, in aviation, a real challenge. And, whether it's a 135, 145, the overhead that it takes to run a really good aviation company is getting more and more challenging every day.
Yep. No, I think
with the audits, with the quality systems, and rightfully so. Mm-hmm. I think those things are important. I've always been a big advocate of, safety standards. And, when I was running AAG, we got ISBAO all the way up to stage 3 certifications. And we're going to go for AS 9110 in my business probably next year. But it's a big expense, relative to the size of the P&L.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's the industry it's a highly regulated industry. There's a lot of moving parts. It's never easy. I don't think over the last 15 years we've really done a great job promoting the huge benefits that aviation brings to our kids. I think we're in a little bit of a challenged world right now. In consolidation, I think small companies is are bringing a lot of opportunity in there to, counteract the Boeings and the consolidation and the fact that that's all, just the nimbleness of it is fantastic.
Well, it's funny, I think that's part of the creative destruction that's going on in the business. You've got Boeing, who announced that they're going to create a $50 billion services business. And, meanwhile, you've got small companies like us that, can have better quality, better turn times, have a live person there when you answer the phone. And, there's 1,000 businesses like mine that are nipping at the heels of Boeing, that want to eat their lunch.
Yeah.
And, so I think that's part of what makes this business so interesting, is that as these companies get bigger, it's going to create a vacuum where, companies like mine are going to go fill it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that's pretty exciting.
Look, Boeing has been down this road before. I know where they want to go, and I can see their vision, and on the flip side, their frustration that they don't have the airplanes from tip to tail, from the day they sell it to the day they get it back, much like a car dealer would. But on the flip side, they've got so many moving parts, and they're so big and so cost cumbersome. I think in 5 years they'll probably want to unwind a lot of which today they are winding up. And they'll just realize, hey, look, the little guy can be very competitive, cost-wise and quality-wise.
Yeah.
And do it quicker and friendlier. And so, the small company always look, never discount the little guy. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Hey, so you do a lot of advocacy. I know you work with NBAA a lot. AOPA, you're on the airport. You're on the airport board or the museum board?
I'm on the board of Eastern Region Helicopter Council.
Okay.
And the helicopter industry's got a lot of challenges right now with noise and the regulatory environment, especially surrounding noise. This latest FAA reauthorization had some pretty harmful, I think, things in there regarding the FAA's ability to regulate safety, taking noise into account. That is going to affect not only helicopters, but I think will affect business jets and airliners long term. Mm-hmm. So I'm on the board of Eastern Region Helicopter Council, and we were involved pretty heavily in the East Hampton litigation. So I got to work with the guys at NBAA, Alex Gertson, and Ed specifically on that. And NBAA was fantastic through that whole thing, and we were able to keep the airport open and protect it and make sure that they were abiding by the grant assurances. And that was a case that went all the way up to it was supposed to go to the Supreme Court. They declined to hear it. So we were involved with the Second Circuit of New York and federal litigation. So it was pretty groundbreaking stuff and really, really interesting from a legal perspective. So I was pretty lucky to be involved in that.
I'll bet. Now you're on Patient Airlift Services Board of Directors too, or you're heavily involved with that, right?
Yeah. So I started out as a pilot volunteer for them several years ago, and got AAG involved in doing PALS flights back and forth to the city. Just had some amazing experiences with people that are most in need of the services that we provide, bringing them back and forth to treatments and whatnot. And got asked earlier this year to join the board, and it's been a fantastic experience. PALS is a great organization. We just merged with Skyhope, so we've got kind of three legs of the stool now, which is transporting patients to and from treatments, ambulatory patients. We're not air ambulance, but just transporting them back and forth to treatments. We've got the PALS Skyhope program, which is really disaster relief, and that started last year with some of the hurricanes that were going on in Texas and Florida. Right. And then we also have a program called PALS for Patriots, where we take wounded veterans, and we have a partnership with Major League Baseball, and we transport them back and forth to baseball games. It's kind of a not only to to say thanks or thank you for their tremendous service, but as a way to make them feel, that, forget about their, the difficulties that they're having for at least for a couple of hours.
Right. No, it's
so
great.
it's a great program. Really is a great program.
How many airplanes involved in that program?
We've got about 1,000 pilots, I think is the latest number, maybe a little bit more. Everything, I fly a Cessna 172, and we've got guys who fly PC-12s and, a lot of owner-flown private jets. So, people are using whatever they have to give back, which, I think, it just shows what great people are involved in aviation and all facets of it.
Yep.
Everybody just wants to do the right thing and take the talents that they have and, apply them towards making somebody's life better. And I've had some amazing experiences with that, with young kids. I can tell you some stories that would just make you tear up. But you're helping somebody, in a time of need, and you're not curing them, but at least for a couple of hours, you're making their life a little bit easier. And it's very satisfying to be able to do that.
Hey, just giving back a little bit, it gives you a lot.
Yeah.
You think about what you give to the patient. You wonder who's giving, who's helping who.
Yeah.
The whole thing, right?
Yep.
Hey, so
and I'm also God. Oh, well, I'm also the other thing I'm involved with pretty heavily is I'm chairman of the board of the New England Air Museum up in Windsor Locks. And I've been chairman 7 years, and that's just a fantastic organization. Not only do we do the standard kind of run of the mill airplane restoration with 3 hangars and 100 some odd aircraft, but we've got a fantastic STEM program that we've delivered to 35,000 kids over the last 10 years. And then we've got great programming. We've got Women Take Flight, Veterans, Voices of Pride. We've got a veterans program coming up. Very interactive. We did our strategic plan about 5 or 6 years ago, and we looked at our most popular programs, and they were ones where the kids got to actually interact with people, not computers. And we've really doubled down on that philosophy. So we've got docents there every day. If you want to get into a cockpit, we've got an open cockpit most days. Programs like that are where you can interact with either somebody that flew the airplane, fixed it, was involved in it somehow, is a really, really fantastic program. And again, we've got a great staff, great volunteers. We've got 100 and something volunteers, and I'm very fortunate to be chairman of the board of directors.
Awesome. No, I love it. Hey, so where do you see, let's wrap up here with your final thoughts. I'm looking a lot about the personal aerial vehicle, the electric helicopters that people are talking about, where you can go from Huntington Beach to downtown LA. And where do you see the future of aviation? And are you optimistic about it?
I am optimistic about the future of aviation, and I'll tell you why. I go to Oshkosh almost every year for all intents and purposes. And you walk around and there are hundreds of thousands of people there from all over the world. And, kids love airplanes. People love airplanes. Air shows are, among the most, popular spectator sports, in the world. Aviation's not going anywhere. We provide a tremendous value to the economy, and we add so much to people's lives. I encourage anybody listening to this. There's a movie called Living in the Age of Airplanes. And it just takes such a mundane thing like getting going down to the store and getting a rose, and how that flower travels around the world over the course of 48 hours. It's really incredible. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about the future. I think we've got some major challenges. Airports, we're losing local airports, we're losing airspace. If you can believe that, but we're losing airspace to TFRs and to, noise restrictions and things like that. So aviation, I think aviation's got a bright future, but we need young people we need young people in the industry. That's probably our most critical thing right now is bringing young people in, and AOPA and NBAA have really done some great things. I can't say enough about Ed Bolin and some of the innovative programs that they've put together with, the Leadership Conference and the CAM program, and now with the YoPro. I mean, at every turn they're addressing issues that we have in the industry. But this getting kids involved in aviation, the ones that are involved in aviation, they're like you and I. They're hardcore. They're never leaving. They're great. We need more of them. And that's the real challenge. Isn't getting, once you get them, you've got them for life. But it's getting them away from all of the other distractions and opportunities that are out there. And I tell people, we have 3 or 4 trade schools here in the state of Connecticut and in New York where you can go get an A&P license. You're always going to have a job with an A&P license. Mm-hmm. And we've got and the people that I talk to, they don't even know that that's an option.
Right.
And so I think we need to do aviation tends to be very insular, and we do a lot of, navel gazing, and we really need to do a better job reaching out to people kind of outside of our sphere of influence. And I think if we do that, we'll be successful, because there is a certain draw about aviation that will always be there.
Yep. No, I got you. So you're the president and CEO of corporate service, supply, and manufacturing. What components do you guys focus on?
Any class 1, 2, and 3 accessory. So we primarily focus on starter generators, generator control units, lighting, skid control units, tank mounted fuel boost pumps. So really all of the electromechanical, electrical components on an aircraft.
Awesome.
And, we've got an unlimited 145, a great crew. And I'm very proud of the company, even though I've only been there a short period of time. I inherited a very, very great team, and, very proud of it.
And what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and then our website is cssmfginc.com, and that's, Twitter, all of the social media is also the same thing, cssmfginc. Awesome.
That's cool. Hey, Scott, thanks for coming on today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Let's do it again.
Good.
I'm gonna come back to you in a couple months. I want to hear how you're doing in the current role.
Fantastic.
And
I'd really enjoy that. And Craig, I can't say enough about what you're doing. I think this discussion about leadership and what's going on in the industry is a discussion that really we need to have. And I gave a presentation at APSI 2 years ago, the Aviation Professionals Sharing Information. Mm-hmm. And careers, it's not really a linear career progression in aviation the way it is, say, in accounting or whatever, where you go from being, a junior accountant to a senior accountant to a controller to a CFO. The careers in aviation are so nonlinear that I think what you're doing and getting people to think about leadership and how they manage their careers and creating role models for especially for people starting out in the industry is really important, and I applaud you for it.
No, I appreciate that. Well, let's come back again in a couple months, and let's do this all over. We'll pick some more cool topics to talk about.
Super. Thanks a lot, Craig.